Good evening, dear listeners, and a very warm welcome to you all. Wherever you are tuning in from tonight, maybe cozied up in bed, listening from your favourite quiet corner at home, or perhaps relaxing somewhere peaceful, with the world fading away outside. I'm so glad you've joined me here. Take a slow, deep breath. Let your shoulders drop. Maybe pull the covers up a bit higher and feel the day gently slip away. Let the story begin. The grand country house of Ashford Grange was the perfect stage for tragedy. Elegant Art Deco lines gleamed under the golden autumn light, every guest playing their refined role amid the Harvest Festival celebrations. Then Sir Reginald Ashford, the wealthy host, was found dead in the locked library, his face twisted in agony, a half-empty glass of fine port beside him, and the police saw a simple heart attack in an elderly man. But Hercule Poirot saw a performance. Someone in this theatre of wealth and autumn harvest was playing the role of innocent. The role of murderer. The curtain rises. Chapter 1. The stage is set. The autumn sun cast long golden shadows across the manicured lawns of Ashford Grange, transforming the elegant country house into a perfect stage for the annual Harvest Festival. Hothouse roses and lilies filled crystal vases in the drawing room, their sweet fragrance blending with the rich aroma of strong continental coffee, and the faint, luxurious trace of Cuban cigar smoke from the previous evening. Silk gowns rustled softly against polished mahogany floors, while the distant sound of a piano drifted through the warm drawing room like a melancholy overture, as Sir Reginald Ashford had gathered his select cast for the weekend celebration. The event was a cherished tradition of bounty. Lawn games under the equinox sun, a lavish feast, and toasts to the turning of the season. Yet beneath the refined elegance, subtle tensions crackled like the fire in the marble fireplace. The grandfather clock chimed solemnly as the household stirred that fateful morning. The library door had been found locked from the inside. Sir Reginald lay slumped in his leather armchair, his skin cold as marble against the dying embers of the fire. His face showed more surprise than pain. The half-empty glass of fine port tipped on the side table, but not shattered. Expensive sandalwood cologne still clung to his rough tweed jacket. The family doctor arrived quickly and pronounced it a natural heart attack, common for a man of 70 with known weaknesses. But the local inspector, called in discreetly, noticed the locked room and the unnatural twist of the features. He summoned a second opinion. You watch with Poirot, no? Observe how the household moves across this stage. Lady Eleanor, the widow, dabs at her eyes with a crisp linen napkin, her shoulders shaking in what appears to be perfect grief. Young Victor Ashford, the nephew, stands too straight, his hands steady upon the velvet curtains. Miss Lydia Crane, the secretary, arranges objects on the desk with nervous precision. Each one already plays their assigned role. Hercule Poirot arrived by the afternoon train from London, his small hands making an expressive gesture as he surveyed the scene. The Belgian detective had been invited to previous festivals, his reputation as sharp as the Art Deco lines of the house. He tilted his egg-shaped head thoughtfully while examining the library. Mon ami, he murmured to the inspector. The stage is set with great care, but every actor eventually forgets their lines. The cast gathered in the drawing room under the tinkling crystal chandelier. Warm firelight danced across the room, fighting the chill night air that seeped through slightly open windows. Lady Eleanor wore a silk gown the colour of autumn leaves. Reginald was the heart of this house, she said, her voice breaking at precisely the right moment. Yet her handkerchief remained dry, and no mascara ran. The performance of grief was technically flawless. Victor Ashford played the dutiful nephew with smooth confidence. His rough tweed jacket carried the scent of fresh wood smoke from the terrace. "Uncle treated me like a son," he declared firmly. But his eyes darted briefly towards the painting that hid the will. "The mask, it slips. Did you catch it?" Miss Lydia Crane sipped hot coffee to steady her nerves, its rich taste cutting through the growing unease. She performed quiet competence, yet the chill from the terrace made her shiver more than the temperature warranted. Dr. Harlan Brooks, the family physician, offered medical reassurance with perhaps too much authority, his sharp cologne mixing with the lingering smell of flowers. Madame Simone Duval, the elegant French guest, added an exotic note with her Worth perfume. "I came only for the festival," she said, silk rustling as she moved. Poirot moved among them like the director he was, arranging a few scattered objects on a side table into perfect symmetry. Order and method guided his every step. "This performance of shock, it is most interesting," he observed. "Some rehearse their grief, others rehearse innocence, but truth does not rehearse." The inspector shared details quietly on the cold terrace. The port had contained a rare poison that mimicked cardiac arrest, subtle, delayed, and perfectly suited to a locked-room drama. No sign of forced entry. The key remained inside. A classic theatrical trick. Watch this performance carefully. Is it truth or theatre? Lady Eleanor avoids looking directly at the library door. Victor speaks of inheritance a touch too soon. Miss Crane burns small papers in the grate when she believes no one watches. Poirot touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully. "The psychology. It is everything. Someone here wears a mask so convincing that even the golden equinox seems to bless their crime." As evening deepened, rain began to patter gently on the windows. The fire crackled warmly against the chill air outside. Earlier, champagne corks had popped in full celebration. Now, only the bitter aftertaste of suspicion lingered. Footsteps echoed on the parquet floors as guests retired to their rooms, doors closing softly behind them. The stage was set. The actors had taken their places. Let the drama begin. Chapter 2. Enter the players' formal interviews unfolded like carefully staged scenes in the bright morning room of Ashford Grange. Sunlight streamed through heavy velvet curtains, warming the polished mahogany table, while the sweet scent of hothouse lilies competed with lingering traces of Cuban cigar smoke and expensive sandalwood cologne. Poirot sat at the head like a master director, his small hands gesturing expressively as each suspect took their mark upon the stage. Lady Eleanor entered first, her silk gown the colour of autumn leaves, rustling softly against the floor. She played the grieving widow with practised elegance, shoulders shaking at the appropriate moments. "Reginald and I shared 30 beautiful years," she murmured, dabbing at her eyes with a crisp linen napkin. But the handkerchief stayed perfectly dry. No mascara ran. The performance was technically flawless. "Observe the performance. The mask slips. Did you catch it?" When she mentioned the will, her eyes gleamed not with sorrow, but with something sharper, more calculating. "Ask yourself," Poirot said, addressing you directly, "why does she speak of the harvest bounty while her husband lies cold in the library?" Victor Ashford followed, performing the role of the shocked and dutiful nephew with smooth confidence. His rough tweed jacket still carried the faint scent of wood smoke from the terrace. "Uncle treated me like his own son. I would never harm him," he declared, hands resting steadily on the table. Yet He avoided Poirot's gaze when questioned about the heated arguments servants had overheard the night before. Too perfect, too rehearsed. Truth stumbles, lies flow smooth. Miss Lydia Crane played the loyal and efficient secretary, her crisp linen blouse immaculate despite the tension. She sipped hot coffee, its rich taste seemingly calming her nerves, though her fingers trembled slightly on the smooth crystal cup. Sir Reginald dictated letters until nearly 10 o'clock, she explained. Then he retired alone to the library with his port. Consider the psychology. What role does this person need to play? The quiet, helpful assistant, perhaps to hide deeper ambitions or knowledge of the will's impending change. Dr. Harlan Brooks entered next, performing professional detachment with authority. His sharp cologne filled the warm room as he defended his initial diagnosis. It was clearly a cardiac event. This talk of poison is quite fanciful. His confidence felt forced, like fear performing as certainty. Madame Simone Duval brought an exotic touch, her Worth perfume drifting through the air like a theatrical backdrop, when she played the role of the charming but distant French acquaintance. "I came only for the Harvest Festival," she said, silk rustling as she crossed her legs gracefully. "The tragedy has shocked me deeply." But her voice carried a chill that had little to do with the cool terrace air. "You watch with Poirot, no? You see how Victor's hands clench when Madame Duval mentions a past financial favour from Sir Reginald? The careful observer, and you are becoming careful, mon ami, will notice these small Aigberge telling gestures. Contradictions appeared as missed cues in their scripts. Lady Eleanor claimed she had retired early to her room, yet a maid had heard her voice in the hallway near midnight. Victor insisted he had walked the terrace alone to clear his head, but fresh footprints in the damp earth suggested he had not been alone. Miss Crane's account of burning unimportant papers clashed with charred fragments mentioning Equinox adjustments to the estate. The tension rises. Someone will break character soon. Poirot smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve with precision. Each actor here has taken a role. The widow performs perfect devotion. The nephew performs gratitude. The secretary performs quiet loyalty. But behind the masks, other emotions may be dancing. Greed, resentment, or perhaps long-buried secrets. We approach the final act. Have you identified the true performer yet? The spotlight of truth is about to shine. On whom will it fall? Interviews continued into the late morning. The taste of dry champagne from the previous evening's toast still lingered bitterly in memory, now replaced by strong coffee. Footsteps echoed on the parquet floors as each guest exited the morning room, doors closing softly behind them. Silk rustled, crystal chandeliers tinkled faintly overhead, and the fire in the adjacent drawing room crackled warmly against the chill autumn air seeping through the windows. Poirot leaned back slightly, his green eyes gleaming with satisfaction. He arranged a few objects on the table into perfect symmetry, order and method his constant companions. "This Harvest Festival has become a most fascinating theatre," he murmured. "Some perform grief, others perform innocence, but the body, it knows the truth even when the face lies. Watch this performance carefully. Is it truth or theatre?" Dr. Brooks defends his diagnosis too vigorously. Madame Duval smiles, but her eyes avoid the mention of old letters. "If you are hiding guilt, how would you perform innocence?" The players had all entered the stage. Their roles were now established, their first masks noted, yet already small cracks showed in the performances. The morning room fell quiet once more, sunlight dancing on the velvet curtains and polished wood. Every actor had taken their mark. But who played truth? Chapter 3. The first act, deeper investigation, began as the golden autumn light filtered through the velvet curtains of Ashford Grange. Poirot moved through the house with order and method, tilting his egg-shaped head while examining the library's locked door mechanism. The key had turned from inside, yet the poison suggested careful planning long before the Harvest Festival feast. Mere masks slipped noticeably when young Victor hesitated over the missing harvest ledger that should have recorded the estate's recent accounts. The first revelation emerged during a private scene with Miss Lydia Crane in the quiet morning room. Pressed gently but firmly about the charred papers she had burned in the grate, she faltered. Her voice trembled as she admitted Sir Reginald had planned to alter his will at the Equinox. He wished the harvest bounty to benefit a charity for the deserving rather than idle family members, she confessed, dabbing at her eyes with a crisp linen napkin. Her emotional tremor felt almost genuine, yet it remained carefully controlled. Poirot's green eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he observed her closely. The performance? She weeps, yes. The handkerchief dabs at the eyes. The shoulders, they shake appropriately. The tell, but observe, the tears are few and quickly mastered. The voice cracks on cue, but recovers too swiftly for true sorrow. The psychology. I am reminded of the case of the veiled lady some years ago, where a woman performed the role of devoted widow with such flawless artistry that all society believed her grief complete. She rehearsed her sobs before dressing-room mirrors, timed the precise quaver in her voice, and even practiced the trembling of her lower lip for hours. She wore black silk with perfect elegance, and accepted condolences with just the right mixture of dignity and fragility. Yet she made one fatal error. When she thought herself alone in the garden, believing no eyes watched, she hummed a cheerful little tune under her breath. A heart truly shattered by loss does not sing so soon after the funeral. The body, it knows the truth even when the face composes the most convincing mask. The little grey cells understand this delicate balance, the psychology beneath the performance. In that affair, the grieving widow had slowly poisoned her wealthy husband to gain both freedom and fortune, all while masking cold relief as mourning. Here at Ashford Grange, perhaps someone else performed sorrow while inwardly celebrating the equinox change in fortune. Approximately 135 words. The truth. Therefore, Miss Crane knew far more about the intended will change than she first admitted. Her distress is part costume, part calculation. You see it now, no? The theatre begins to crumble. A parallel from Poirot's past cases reinforced the insight. In the famous Ackroyd affair, performances of shock had deceived even experienced observers. But the steady hands reaching calmly for a cigarette case had revealed the careful rehearsal. Similar small tells were appearing here amid the Harvest Festival drama. Reflection. In this elegant autumn theatre at Ashford Grange, masks are worn with the same refined grace as the silk gowns and Art Deco crystal. Lady Eleanor performs devotion while her eyes quietly calculate the inheritance. Victor plays loyal nephew while resentment simmers beneath. Miss Crane enacts quiet efficiency, yet burns evidence when unobserved. Humans wear masks because society demands polished roles, the perfect widow, the grateful heir, the discreet secretary. Beneath these performances lie deeper forces: fear of poverty, greed for sudden wealth, or pride that refuses to appear grasping. or why reveal raw resentment when a mask of gratitude keeps one welcome at the table? Why show relief when grief secures sympathy and status? I recall another theatrical affair from 1928, the theatre murder at the Golden Stage, where an entire acting troupe staged a real killing during the final act of a play. The true murderer performed innocence so convincingly that even his fellow thespians believed him innocent. He had studied expressions of horror in the dressing room mirrors for weeks, practiced the widening of shocked eyes, and rehearsed the exact tone of outraged denial. Off-stage, however, when he thought the curtain fully down and no audience remained, his smile turned triumphant and satisfied. The psychology was clear. Guilt always manifests in over-perfection or tiny lapses when the spotlight dims and the actor believes himself unwatched. We all wear masks in daily life. Society forces the polite smile at unwelcome news, the solemn nod at funerals we secretly welcome, the show of loyalty to those we resent. Yet truth has a stubborn habit of slipping through in unguarded moments. A dry eye, a steady hand, a hummed tune in the garden. The universal truth about deception is that it exhausts the actor. Lies demand constant rehearsal and perfect timing. Genuine truth flows naturally, even when it stumbles. In this Harvest Festival mystery, the equinox itself becomes a symbol of balance, between light and darkness, performance and reality, mask and true face. Theatrical wisdom for you, a mon ami. Do not watch only the grand gestures under the chandelier. Observe instead the quiet moments when the spotlight fades. Who relaxes into their authentic self? Who continues acting even when no one seems to watch? The mask cracks first in those shadows. Some wear masks for protection, others for conquest or concealment. But every actor, no matter how skilled, eventually forgets their lines. The first act concluded. Some masks had cracked. More would follow. Sensory details enriched every moment. The taste of rich, hot coffee served during the interviews, dry champagne from the previous evening still a bitter memory on the tongue, the warmth of the drawing-room fire against the chill terrace air outside. Footsteps echoed on a parquet floors. Silk continued to rustle. Crystal chandeliers tinkled faintly overhead, and then the faint scent of wood smoke drifted in from the terrace. The stage lights of truth had begun to brighten, revealing the first flaws in the carefully rehearsed performances. Poirot drew himself up to his full, still small, height, and made an expressive gesture with his small hands. We have seen the opening act. Now the drama deepens. The players grow uneasy. Soon someone will forget their lines entirely. The first mask cracked. More would follow. Chapter 4. Rehearsed Lines. Poirot began to apply pressure on the cast with quiet precision, turning the morning room into a stage for testing alibis. The warm drawing-room fire crackled softly against the chill autumn air seeping through the windows, while the sweet scent of hothouse lilies mingled with lingering Cuban cigar smoke and sharp sandalwood cologne. Sunlight danced on polished mahogany as each suspect returned for deeper questioning. He started with Victor Ashford. The young man's rough tweed jacket still carried the faint trace of wood smoke from the terrace. Poirot tilted his egg-shaped head and touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully. "Your terrace walk on the night of the tragedy, Monsieur Victor. The fresh footprints in the damp earth tell a different story from your smooth words." Victor performed indignation with strained confidence. "I was alone, clearing my head after the feast." His hands remained too steady on the crystal glass of water. The rehearsed lines began to show strain, as Poirot revealed that a servant had seen two figures on the terrace near midnight. Too perfect, too rehearsed. Truth stumbles, lies flow smooth. Lady Eleanor entered next, her silk gown rustling like autumn leaves. She played outraged dignity, dabbing at dry eyes with a crisp linen napkin. How dare you suggest I knew of any will change? Yet when pressed about her voice, heard in the hallway near midnight, her shoulders shook, but the performance felt forced. The mask of the grieving widow started to crack under the spotlight. "Watch this performance carefully," Poirot said, addressing you directly. "Is it truth or theatre? Her grief wears perfect costume, but observe the eyes. Where is the moisture of real tears?" Miss Lydia Crane followed, attempting to maintain her role of quiet competence. She sipped hot coffee, its rich taste failing to steady her trembling fingers on the smooth crystal cup. Poirot confronted her with the charred fragments mentioning Equinox adjustments. "You burned more than unimportant papers, mademoiselle. Sir Reginald planned to redirect the harvest fortune away from family." Her helpfulness turned defensive. "I only protected his privacy." The lines faltered as her voice rose unnaturally. Fear performed as loyalty, but the body betrayed her with quick, shallow breaths. Dr. Harlan Brooks defended his medical verdict with growing agitation, his cologne sharp in the warm room. "The heart attack was natural. Poison is melodramatic nonsense." Poirot noted how the doctor's hands clenched when asked about his own financial ties to the estate. Confidence masked terror. Madame Simone Duval played the charming outsider, her Worth perfume drifting elegantly. Silk rustled as she crossed her legs. I have no part in family matters," she insisted. But when Poirot mentioned an old letter found in the fireplace ashes, her smile froze. The distant friend role began to show its seams. "You watch with Poirot, no? You see how Madame Duval's gloved hands twist when past connections surface. The careful observer, and you are becoming careful, mon ami, will notice these small cracks in the script." Poirot smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve with precision. He arranged a few objects on the table symmetrically, order and method guiding his thoughts. Rehearsed lines, they begin to falter under pressure. Alibis are like fragile scripts. When tested, they tear. The tension rises. Someone will break character soon. Confrontations continued through the afternoon, and the taste of dry champagne from earlier celebrations now felt bitterly ironic. Footsteps echoed on parquet floors as suspects entered and exited. Crystal chandeliers tinkled faintly overhead with each movement. And the fire's warmth battled the chill night air creeping in. Victor returned for a second round, his performance growing strained. "Uncle was robust until that port." Poirot made an expressive gesture with his small hands. "Yet you argued with him about the charity bequest. Greed, monsieur, often performs as family devotion." Lady Eleanor's mask slipped further when reminded of her secret correspondence. She played wounded innocence, but her voice trembled on the wrong words. "This is harassment." The rehearsed grief no longer convinced. Miss Crane broke slightly, admitting she had witnessed the argument. He said the harvest should go to those who worked for it. Her efficiency roll cracked, revealing quiet ambition beneath. Dr. Brooks grew defensive, his authority performing as bluster. Madame Duval avoided questions about old grudges, her exotic charm turning brittle. We approach the final act. Have you identified the true performer? The spotlight of truth grows brighter. Poirot drew himself up to his full, still small, height, his green eyes gleaming with satisfaction. False performances expose themselves when pressure mounts. The widow performs sorrow, while relief dances behind the eyes. The nephew performs loyalty, while debts whisper in the dark. The secretary performs helpfulness, while hiding knowledge. Each script weakens. If you were hiding guilt, how would you perform innocence? Would your hands stay steady? Would your eyes meet the director's gaze? The afternoon light shifted toward evening. Rain pattered gently on the windows, adding rhythm to the unfolding drama. The scent of fresh flowers faded as wood smoke from the terrace grew stronger. Doors closed softly behind each departing actor. Rehearsed lines began to falter. The script was failing. Chapter 5. The Mask Slips. The major confrontation unfolded in the drawing room, as golden afternoon light gave way to lengthening shadows. Warm firelight danced across the crystal chandelier, its soft tinkling mixing with the crackle of logs and the distant patter of rain on the windows. The sweet scent of hothouse lilies now battled the sharper notes of Cuban cigar smoke and sandalwood cologne that still lingered from earlier interviews. Poirot stood like a director ready to call the climax, his small hands making an expressive gesture as he gathered the key players for the decisive scene. He turned the spotlight directly on Victor Ashford. The young man entered with forced confidence, his rough tweed jacket slightly rumpled, carrying the faint trace of wood smoke from the terrace. Poirot tilted his egg-shaped head and touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully. Monsieur Victor, let us speak plainly of the harvest ledger and the missing entries. Your uncle planned to cut you from the main inheritance at the Equinox. A charity would receive what you expected as your due. Victor played outraged innocence at first. That is a lie. Uncle would never. His voice rose, but Poirot pressed harder, revealing witness accounts of the heated argument and the large gambling debts hidden behind charming smiles. And the performance strained visibly. Hands that had stayed steady now clenched on the polished mahogany table. Observe carefully, Poirot said, addressing you. This actor plays the loyal nephew. But watch the eyes. Where is the genuine shock? The mask begins to slip. Pressure mounted like a tightening script. Poirot revealed the poison's subtle nature and how it had been added to the port earlier in the evening chaos of the festival. Victor's role of grieving heir cracked further when confronted with the string mechanism, used to lock the door from outside after the deed. You planned it during the harvest games, no? Greed performing as family devotion. Suddenly, the mask fell completely. Victor's shoulders slumped. The smooth confidence shattered into raw anger as the emotional breakdown erupted. He was cutting me off for strangers, he burst out, voice hoarse and trembling. After everything I endured, smiling, pretending, waiting for what was rightfully mine. The old man spoke of deserving, while I carried his name and his debts. Real feeling poured forth at last. No rehearsed lines, only bitter resentment long suppressed beneath the dutiful nephew role. His hands shook now, the steady performer gone. Tears came, but they were hot with rage rather than sorrow. Poirot's green eyes gleamed with satisfaction. He drew himself up to his full, still small, height and made another expressive gesture with his small hands. The psychology of the moment was clear. Guilt had finally overwhelmed the actor when the performance could no longer be sustained. The performance! He raged, yes! The voice rose in righteous anger, and the fists clenched dramatically on the table. The tell, but observe, the anger came too late, and the earlier steadiness of his hands when discussing the tragedy did not match true shock. A man genuinely devastated trembles from the first moment. The psychology. This reminds me of the Hastings nephew case in the quiet Kent village, where a young man performed devoted care for his wealthy aunt with such convincing warmth that neighbours praised his kindness. He rehearsed gentle smiles and patient listening for weeks, even practising soft tones of concern before mirrors. He brought her favourite flowers and sat by her bedside with perfect patience. Yet one small error betrayed him. When alone in the garden after her sudden natural death, thinking no one watched, he whistled a cheerful tune and counted imaginary banknotes with steady fingers. A heart truly broken by loss does not whistle or count money so soon. The body knows the truth the face tries to hide. The little grey cells understand this, the psychology beneath the performance of love, masking cold calculation. In that affair, the nephew had slowly administered poison while playing the perfect carer, all to inherit quickly. Here at Ashford Grange, greed performed as loyalty until the mask could hold no longer. When the spotlight of truth burned too brightly, the real face emerged in rage and confession, approximately 130 words. The truth, therefore, Victor knew the will changed and acted to secure his harvest of fortune before the Equinox papers were signed. His breakdown reveals the true face at last. You see it now, non? And the theatre of deception crumbles when real emotion breaks through. The room fell heavy with silence, broken only by the fire's crackle and the rain on the windows. Lady Eleanor sat pale, her widow's mask of grief stripped away to show quiet relief mixed with horror. Miss Lydia Crane lowered her eyes, the efficient secretary role suddenly small. Dr. Brooks and Madame Duval watched in stunned silence, their own performances forgotten for the moment. Consider the psychology. What role did Victor need to play to survive in this elegant world? The grateful heir, hiding debts and resentment behind smiles and smooth words. When that mask slipped, the raw greed and hate emerged like autumn leaves stripped by wind. If you were hiding guilt, how would you perform innocence? Would your hands remain steady while discussing murder? Or would your grief appear on cue, dry-eyed and perfect? Victor's performance had been convincing until the pressure became too great. Now the true face stared back, twisted by long-nursed resentment. Poirot arranged a few objects on the side table into perfect symmetry, order, and method, restoring calm to the charged atmosphere. The taste of bitter suspicion hung heavier than any medicine, while the warm fire fought the chill night air seeping in. The mask had fallen. The true face emerged. Chapter 6. Behind the Curtain. The drawing-room grew quieter after Victor's breakdown, yet the true backstage drama now unfolded. Warm firelight flickered across velvet curtains and polished mahogany, while the sweet scent of hothouse lilies mixed with fading Cuban cigar smoke and the sharp edge of sandalwood cologne. Rain continued its soft patter on the windows, and the grandfather clock chimed solemnly in the distance. Poirot moved among the remaining cast, like a director revealing the hidden machinery of the stage. Past secrets emerged one by one as the curtain was drawn back. Victor's heavy gambling debts, long hidden behind his charming nephew role, had pushed him toward desperation. Sir Reginald had discovered them during the harvest preparations and threatened to redirect the entire fortune to charity at the Equinox. Madame Simone Duval's elegant Worth perfume had masked an old romantic entanglement with Sir Reginald from decades ago, an affair that ended in bitterness when he chose Lady Eleanor instead. A bundle of yellowed letters, partially burned in the grate, told of threats and unpaid loans, Miss Lydia Crane's crisp linen efficiency hid her own quiet ambition. She had hoped the will change might bring her a generous legacy for years of loyal service. Dr. Harlan Brooks, whose sharp cologne still lingered, had secretly borrowed large sums from Sir Reginald to cover failed investments. His confident medical pronouncement had been an attempt to protect both his reputation and his debts. Lady Eleanor's silk gown and dignified grief concealed a secret lover in the nearby village, and relief at finally being free from a cold, controlling marriage. Hidden connections wove through the cast like unseen stage ropes. Victor and Madame Duval had spoken privately on the terrace the night of the murder, discussing old favours and possible alliances. Miss Crane had witnessed the argument in the library, but stayed silent, hoping the chaos might benefit her. Dr. Brooks had supplied the rare poison years earlier for medicinal research, never imagining it would return to the stage in this deadly manner. The backstage of relationships stood fully exposed. Greed had performed as family loyalty. Resentment had worn the mask of devotion. Old hate had dressed itself as charming friendship. Love had twisted into cold calculation behind polite smiles. Reflection behind the elegant curtain of Ashford Grange's Harvest Festival, motives lurked like shadows beneath the golden equinox light. Victor's helpful cooperation masked raw greed for an inheritance he believed was his right. Lady Eleanor's grief performed devotion, while relief bloomed quietly at the thought of freedom and a new life. Miss Crane's quiet efficiency hid ambition, and Dr. Brooks's medical authority concealed financial desperation. Humans wear these masks because revelation carries too high a price. Loss of status, love, security, or the carefully built image society demands. Why show resentment when gratitude keeps invitations coming? Why reveal relief when mourning brings sympathy and respect? Society forces polished roles upon us all. The dutiful nephew, the devoted widow, the loyal secretary. Beneath, fear, greed, pride, and long-nursed hate drive the performance. I recall the celebrated case aboard the luxury liner Queen of the Adriatic, where passengers performed camaraderie and holiday cheer during a glittering voyage. The murderer, a seemingly generous businessman, played the role of helpful friend with magnificent warmth, sharing champagne, laughing at jokes, offering advice. He rehearsed concerned expressions in his cabin mirror and practiced the exact tone of shock when the body was discovered. His mask was so convincing that even I, Hercule Poirot, felt momentary doubt. Yet backstage, when he believed himself alone on the moonlit deck, his face relaxed into cold satisfaction, and he counted imaginary gains with steady hands. A truly innocent man does not smile in triumph after tragedy. The body betrays what the face conceals. The little grey cells understand this psychology of hidden motives, the performance of loyalty masking cold calculation. In that floating theatre, greed had worn the costume of friendship until the spotlight of truth burned through. Here at Ashford Grange, similar backstage truths have emerged. Old affairs, secret debts, and quiet ambitions all danced behind the Harvest Festival elegance. The universal truth is that hidden motives always fester until the balance tips, much like the equinox itself, where light and darkness stand equal before one overtakes the other. No curtain can hide them forever. Theatrical wisdom for you, mon ami. Peer behind the curtain whenever possible. There the real drama plays out in unguarded moments, trembling hands, avoided eyes, or a smile that appears when no one should be watching. Some wear masks for protection, others for conquest, but every secret eventually demands its bow. Behind every curtain, a secret. Every secret, a motive. The revelations continued into the evening. The taste of rich coffee and sweet liqueur offered little comfort against the chill night air that crept through the terrace doors. His silk rustled as Lady Eleanor rose unsteadily, her widow's mask now fully discarded. Victor sat broken in his chair, the charming performer reduced to a man stripped of all pretense. Footsteps echoed softly on parquet floors as the cast moved about, doors closing with finality. Poirot arranged several objects on the side table into perfect symmetry, his green eyes gleaming with quiet satisfaction. The psychology of the case grew clearer with every layer peeled away. Greed had been the central performer, but many supporting roles had enabled the tragedy. The grand country house, once a stage of refined celebration, now felt like an empty theatre after the lights had dimmed. The Harvest Festival bounty had turned bitter, revealing the true faces behind the elegant costume, behind every curtain, a secret, every secret, a motive. To Chapter 7, the final act. The cast assembled in the drawing-room as evening shadows lengthened across Ashford Grange. The crystal chandelier tinkled softly overhead, its light dancing on polished mahogany and velvet curtains. A warm fire crackled in the marble fireplace, pushing back the chill night air that seeped through the windows, while the sweet scent of hothouse lilies mingled with lingering Cuban cigar smoke and sharp sandalwood cologne. Rain pattered gently outside, adding its rhythm to the final scene. Poirot stood at the centre like the director calling the curtain on the last act. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and commanding, "you have each performed for Poirot. Some truthfully, some not. Let us review the performances, shall we?" He turned first to Lady Eleanor, who sat pale in her silk gown, the colour of autumn leaves. "Lady Eleanor, you played the grieving widow with elegance." The shoulders shook, the handkerchief dabbed at the eyes at precisely the right moments. But the grief, it was costume. The handkerchief remained dry. No mascara ran. Real sorrow does not rehearse its tears so perfectly. You knew of the will change and felt relief, not loss. Lady Eleanor lowered her eyes, the widow's mask stripped away. Poirot continued, making an expressive gesture with his small hands. "Victor Ashford, you performed the loyal and dutiful nephew with smooth confidence. Hands steady, voice firm, eyes appropriately shocked. But loyalty does not argue violently with an uncle over money, nor hide heavy gambling debts. Loyalty does not slip poison into the port glass during the harvest chaos. Then you use a simple string trick to lock the library door from the outside after the deed. Your performance was magnificent, until the mask slipped and real anger poured forth." Victor sat slumped, face ashen, the charming air role shattered. "Miss Lydia Crane, your role was the innocent and efficient secretary. Crisp linen, quiet competence, helpful to the end. Yet innocent secretaries do not burn evidence of the will change, nor stay silent about overheard arguments hoping for personal gain. Your performance of loyalty hid quiet ambition." Miss Crane twisted her hands in her lap, unable to meet his gaze. "Dr. Harlan Brooks, you played the confident family physician. Authority in every word, defending the heart attack diagnosis with vigour. But confidence does not supply rare poison years earlier, nor lie to protect one's own debts. Your performance masked desperation." The doctor's face flushed, his sharp cologne suddenly too strong in the warm room. "Madame Simone Duval, you gave the charming guest performance. Exotic Worth perfume, graceful silk rustling, distant sympathy. charm hides old romantic grudges and secret conversations on the terrace. Your role was beautifully played, but not perfectly." Madame Duval's smile faded, her gloved hands tightening. Poirot drew himself up to his full, still small, height, green eyes gleaming with satisfaction. He touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully before delivering the final lines. "And so we come to our leading performer, Victor Ashford. You gave the most convincing performance of all. The shock, the outrage, the helpful cooperation after the body was found. Magnifique! You moved among us like the perfect nephew. Steady hands, smooth words, grief rehearsed to perfection. But you made one small error. One moment when the mask slipped completely. When speaking of the tragedy in this very room, your hands remained perfectly steady. A man truly shocked does not have steady hands. The body knows the truth even when the face lies. You added the poison to the port earlier during the festival games, retired to the library with your uncle, waited for the effect, then slipped out and pulled the string to lock the door from outside. All for the harvest of fortune you believed was yours by right. Greed performed as family loyalty until the end." Victor's shoulders shook with a final broken sob. No more lines remained. "The performance is over," Poirot concluded, his voice ringing with quiet authority. "The curtain falls. The truth, she takes her bow." Silence filled the drawing room, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the soft rain on the windows. Footsteps had long since stopped on the parquet floors. Crystal glasses stood untouched, their champagne taste now forgotten. The warm firelight illuminated faces stripped of all masks, Lady Eleanor pale with mixed relief and horror, Miss Crane small and exposed, Dr. Brooks defeated, Madame Duval silent and distant. "You watch with Poirot, no?" The spotlight of truth has shone brightly. Did you see each mask fall? The widow's dry eyes, the nephew's steady hands, the secretary's burnt papers, the doctor's lies, the guest's hidden grudges. If you were hiding guilt, how would you have performed innocence? Would your hands tremble at the right moment, or remain too steady? The psychology, it is everything. People wear masks out of fear, greed, pride, and love twisted into obsession. Yet truth always emerges, because performances exhaust the actor. Rehearsed lines eventually falter. The body betrays what the face tries to hide. Poirot arranged a few objects on the side table into perfect symmetry, order and method restoring calm after the dramatic revelation. The grand country house, once vibrant with harvest festival laughter, now stood as a quiet stage where only truth remained. The final act concluded. Only truth survived the curtain call. Chapter 8. Curtain call. The drawing room of Ashford Grange fell into a heavy, almost reverent silence after Poirot's final words. The crystal chandelier continued its soft tinkling overhead, while the warm fire crackled in the marble fireplace, fighting the chill night air that pressed against the rain-streaked windows. The sweet scent of hothouse lilies now seemed fainter, overtaken by the lingering traces of Cuban cigar smoke, sharp sandalwood cologne, and the faint bitterness of strong coffee that had grown cold in forgotten cups. No one applauded. This was no ordinary performance. Victor Ashford sat motionless in his chair, the last remnants of his charming nephew mask completely stripped away. His rough tweed jacket looked suddenly shabby under the chandelier light, his hands now trembling openly on the polished mahogany table. The confident performer who had spoken so smoothly of inheritance was gone. In his place sat a broken man, face pale and eyes hollow, with the realization that the Equinox harvest of fortune he had killed for would never be his. Lady Eleanor rose slowly, her silk gown rustling like dry autumn leaves. The dignified widow role had dissolved entirely. Her face showed a complex mixture of relief and quiet horror. "I never wanted him dead," she whispered, voice raw and unpolished for the first time. "Only free." The dry-eyed grief she had performed so carefully had been replaced by genuine, unsteady emotion. She no longer dabbed at imaginary tears with her crisp linen napkin. The mask was gone, leaving a woman who could finally breathe. Miss Lydia Crane sat with lowered eyes, her crisp linen blouse no longer immaculate. The efficient secretary who had burned papers to protect secrets now looked small and exposed. "I only hoped for a little security," she murmured. Her helpfulness had been a costume for quiet ambition. Now stripped of it, she appeared vulnerable, the hands twisting in her lap as footsteps echoed softly on the parquet floors when she shifted uncomfortably. Dr. Harlan Brooks stared at the fire. His authoritative posture collapsed. The sharp cologne that had once signaled confidence now seemed overpowering in the warm room. "I supplied the poison years ago, never imagining." His voice trailed off. The performance of professional detachment had failed completely. Justice would question his medical judgment and his debts with equal severity. Madame Simone Duval remained seated with elegant poise, though her Worth perfume no longer masked the bitterness in her eyes. The charming French guest role had cracked beyond repair. "Old wounds heal slowly," she said quietly, silk rustling as she adjusted her gloves. "Ah, but murder, that was never my script." Her distant sympathy had hidden deeper grudges, now laid bare for all to see. Poirot moved among them with quiet authority, smoothing an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve with precision. He arranged a few scattered objects on the side table into perfect symmetry, restoring a sense of order and method to the charged atmosphere. "The curtain call has come," he said softly. "No applause for this performance, only justice." The local inspector, who had waited discreetly in the background, stepped forward. Handcuffs clicked softly around Victor's wrists. The sound was small, yet it echoed like a final door closing on the stage. Victor offered no resistance. The raging anger that had erupted earlier had drained away, leaving only exhausted resignation. The leading performer who had rehearsed his shock so carefully now faced the real consequences without any remaining lines. Lady Eleanor watched the arrest with steady eyes, no longer performing grief. A subtle transformation had begun. The cold control of her marriage had ended. She would inherit a smaller but sufficient portion, enough for quiet independence and perhaps a new chapter with her secret lover. The relief in her posture was genuine, no longer hidden behind dry handkerchiefs and rehearsed sobs. Miss Crane stood as the inspector led Victor away. Her future would involve questioning, but her honesty in the final moments might spare her harsher punishment. The ambitious secretary could seek new employment with cleaner hands. Dr. Brooks faced professional ruin and possible charges for supplying the poison. His confident mask had cost him everything. Madame Duval would return to France, her old grudges finally laid to rest, though the scandal would follow her like a faint trace of perfume. Footsteps echoed on the parquet floors as the small procession moved toward the front door. The grandfather clock chimed the hour, its solemn notes marking the end of the drama. Doors closed softly behind them, the sound final and theatrical. Outside, the rain had eased, leaving the terrace cold and glistening under the equinox moon. Poirot stood by the fireplace, his green eyes gleaming with quiet satisfaction. He touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully, reflecting on the transformations before him. The elegant country house, once vibrant with harvest festival laughter and champagne corks, now felt peaceful in its emptiness, and the stage had been cleared. You watch with Poirot, no? See how each actor leaves the stage changed. The murderer, once convincing and smooth, now walks in chains. The widow, once performing grief, finds honest relief. The supporting players shed their costumes, revealing ordinary human faces beneath. Justice does not applaud. It simply balances the scales, much like the equinox itself. The warm fire continued to crackle, providing the only remaining warmth against the chill night air. The taste of bitter medicine lingered metaphorically on every tongue. Silk no longer rustled with false elegance. Crystal glasses stood untouched. No applause for this performance. Only justice. Chapter 9. After the show. The grand country house of Ashford Grange stood quieter than ever in the pale morning light after the long night. A golden autumn sun filtered through the velvet curtains, warming the drawing room, where the final scenes had played out. The sweet scent of hothouse lilies had begun to fade, replaced by the clean smell of fresh air, drifting in from the open terrace doors. The fire had burned low to glowing embers, its warmth now gentle against the lingering chill of the night air. Polished mahogany tables gleamed softly, free of the tension that had filled the room only hours before. Justice had begun its steady work. Victor Ashford had been taken away at dawn, his rough tweed jacket looking crumpled and ordinary under the morning light. The charming nephew who had performed loyalty so convincingly now faced a long trial. Greed, once masked as family devotion, had cost him everything. No more rehearsed lines or steady hands. Only the reality of prison walls awaited the leading performer whose mask had slipped so dramatically. Lady Eleanor moved through the house with a new lightness in her step. Her silk gown, still the colour of autumn leaves, no longer served as costume for grief. She had removed the heavy widow's veil she once wore so carefully. Relief showed plainly on her face. No dry handkerchiefs, no rehearsed sobs. The cold control of her marriage had ended. She would keep a comfortable portion of the estate and planned a quiet life in a smaller house near her secret lover. The transformation was clear, from the performed devoted wife to a woman finally free to live authentically. She arranged fresh flowers in a crystal vase with genuine care, the rustle of silk now softer, more natural. Miss Lydia Crane packed her belongings in the upstairs room, her crisp linen blouse neatly pressed once more. The efficient secretary role had been stripped away, leaving a woman wiser and more cautious. She had cooperated fully with the inspector, admitting her small ambitions and the papers she burned. No charges would be pressed against her. She would seek new employment with cleaner hands and clearer eyes. The quiet ambition that once hid behind helpfulness had been replaced by honest reflection. As she closed her suitcase, the sound of the latch echoed like a final curtain. Dr. Harlan Brooks had left before sunrise, his sharp cologne no longer lingering in the halls. His confident physician performance had collapsed entirely. Professional ruin loomed, along with possible charges for supplying the rare poison, and the man who once defended diagnoses with authority now faced scrutiny from his own medical board. The transformation was harsh, but necessary. Fear that had performed as confidence had cost him his reputation and security. Madame Simone Duval prepared to depart for the afternoon train to London, then onward to France. Her Worth perfume still carried a faint exotic note, but the charming guest mask had been discarded. Old romantic grudges had been aired and finally laid to rest. She would return home carrying the scandal like a faint shadow, yet with a strange sense of closure. The elegant silk dresses she packed rustled with finality. Her future would be quieter, less entangled with English country houses and their hidden dramas. Poirot walked the terrace in the cool morning air, his small hands clasped behind his back. And he tilted his egg-shaped head as he observed the transformed setting. The lawns where Harvest Festival games had once brought laughter now lay peaceful under the equinox sun. The stage that had hosted murder, masks and revelations had returned to elegant calm. Order and method had been restored to Ashford Grange. You watch with Poirot, no? See how the theatre empties and each actor leaves changed. The murderer, once so convincing in his role, now faces justice without any remaining performance. The widow finds honest relief after years of playing devotion. The secretary steps into a future with cleaner hands. Supporting players shed their costumes and walk away wiser, if humbled. The grand house itself transforms from crime scene to peaceful home once more. The psychology of these changes ran deep. People wear masks out of fear, greed, and the role society demands. When the spotlight of truth shines too brightly, the performances end. Real faces emerge, sometimes broken, sometimes relieved, always more authentic. Guilt had betrayed Victor through steady hands and rehearsed grief. Truth had triumphed because no actor can sustain lies forever. The body knows, the little grey cells observe. Inside, Lady Eleanor offered Poirot a final cup of rich, hot coffee. Its taste was strong and comforting, cutting through the morning chill. They sat together without the weight of suspicion. Silk no longer rustled with tension. Footsteps on the parquet floors sounded lighter. The grandfather clock chimed peacefully, marking the passage of time rather than dramatic entrances. Miss Crane paused at the door before leaving, offering a small, genuine nod of thanks. Doctor, Herr Brooks's absence left an empty space, but the house felt cleaner without his false authority. Madame Duval's carriage rolled away down the drive, her elegant figure waving once from the window. Poirot smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve with precision and made a small, expressive gesture. The show is over. The lessons, however, remain. Masks fall. Truth endures. The estate would honour Sir Reginald's true wishes. A significant portion of the harvest fortune would go to the charity he had chosen at the Equinox. The remaining family would live more modestly, but more honestly. Transformations had touched every life that weekend. The theatre emptied. The lessons remained. The golden autumn light bathed Ashford Grange in gentle peace, as if the stage itself had taken its final bow, and found quiet satisfaction in the resolution. Oh, the curtain had fallen completely. No more performances. Only truth and its quiet aftermath lingered in the elegant rooms and on the sunlit lawns. Chapter 10. Poirot reviews the performance. In the comfortable quiet of his London apartment, Hercule Poirot sat in his favourite armchair beside the window. A steaming cup of tisane rested on the small table, its herbal aroma rising gently in the warm room. Afternoon light filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow on the polished surfaces he kept in perfect order. Outside, the sounds of the city were distant. Footsteps on pavement, the occasional honk of a horn, but inside, peace reigned. He had returned from Ashford Grange 2 days earlier. The Harvest Festival mystery now neatly filed in his mind like a completed play script. News of the character's fates had reached him that morning. Victor Ashford awaited trial, his once charming performance reduced to a pale, broken man in custody. Greed had cost him freedom and reputation. Lady Eleanor had begun a quieter life in a modest cottage, her relief genuine and unmasked. Miss Lydia Crane had secured a new position with a respectable family, her ambition now tempered by hard lessons. Dr. Harlan Brooks faced disciplinary hearings and the likely loss of his practice. Madame Simone Duval had sailed back to France, the old grudges finally laid to rest. The grand country house stood peaceful once more, its lawns empty of festival games, its library no longer a stage for tragedy. Poirot touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully and arranged the objects on his table into perfect symmetry. Order and method, always his guiding principles. He reflected deeply on the human drama he had directed at Ashford Grange. Why do people perform rather than reveal truth? Fear, mon ami. Fear of judgment, fear of losing status, fear of facing the raw self. Greed whispers that a mask of loyalty will secure the harvest of fortune. Pride demands the perfect widow, the dutiful nephew, the confident doctor. Love twists into obsession and hides behind indifference. Society itself writes the scripts. Smile at funerals, nod at unwanted favours, perform devotion when resentment burns inside. At Ashford Grange, Victor performed gratitude while plotting murder. Lady Eleanor performed grief while feeling relief. Each actor believed their mask would protect them. Yet masks always fatigue the wearer. Lies require constant rehearsal. Truth needs none. The psychology of revelation is simple yet profound. Guilt betrays the actor through the body. Steady hands when shock should tremble. Dry eyes when tears should flow. A voice too smooth when it should break. In Victor's case, the mask slipped when his hands remained perfectly steady while discussing the tragedy. The body knows the truth even when the face composes the most convincing performance. The little grey cells observe these small inconsistencies. They see what the casual eye misses. I am reminded of a past case that parallels this Harvest Festival drama in striking ways. It was the affair of the silver harvest at Lord Whitby's estate in 1932. A wealthy landowner was found dead in his study during the autumn gathering, apparently from a heart seizure. His nephew performed grief with such flawless devotion, shaking shoulders, timely sobs, even a well-placed handkerchief, that the entire household believed him innocent. He rehearsed his expressions before mirrors, practiced the exact tone of outrage, and moved among the guests with steady hands, offering comfort. Yet one unguarded moment in the garden, when he thought himself alone, revealed the truth. He smiled with cold satisfaction, and counted imaginary banknotes with fingers that never trembled. A truly shocked man does not smile or count gains so soon. The body betrayed him, just as Victor's steady hands betrayed him at Ashford Grange. In that case, greed wore the costume of family loyalty. The nephew had poisoned the wine to secure the inheritance before a new will could be signed. The psychology was identical, performance of love masking cold calculation, and the Equinox balance tipped toward truth when the spotlight grew too bright. Both cases show how guilt always leaves traces in the unguarded moments when the actor believes the curtain has fallen. How guilt manifests physically is a study in contrasts. The innocent may stumble in their words, hands may shake with natural emotion. The guilty rehearse, too, perfectly, smooth lines, controlled gestures, eyes that avoid the wrong details at the wrong time. Victor's error was classic. He played shock convincingly until the pressure mounted. Then real anger erupted, raw and unrehearsed, because the mask could no longer contain the truth beneath. The masks society demands are many. The perfect host, the loyal heir, the efficient secretary, the confident physician. We wear them daily, polishing our performances for dinner parties, family gatherings, out in public eyes. Yet when the theatre of crime opens, these masks become dangerous. They hide greed performing as grief, hate performing as loyalty, fear performing as confidence. At Ashford Grange, the Harvest Festival provided the perfect elegant stage, Art Deco glamour, champagne toasts, silk gowns rustling, crystal chandeliers tinkling. But beneath the refinement, human nature remained unchanged. People performed because they believed the role would bring them safety or fortune. They forgot that truth eventually demands its bow. Why does truth ultimately triumph over performance? Because lies exhaust the actor. Rehearsed lines falter under pressure. The body refuses to sustain the deception forever. A dry handkerchief, a steady hand, a hummed tune in private. These small tells accumulate until the curtain must fall. Poirot does not rely only on physical clues. The psychology, it is everything. One must watch not the grand gestures under the spotlight, but the quiet moments when the actor thinks no one watches. In this case, the equinox itself became a symbol. Light and darkness in balance. Mask and true face standing equal before truth overtakes performance. The theatre of crime at Ashford Grange had one truth. Every actor eventually forgets their lines. Poirot sipped his tisane, its warm taste comforting after the bitter drama. He leaned back, green eyes gleaming with quiet satisfaction. The transformations he had witnessed were complete. The murderer exposed, the innocents freed from suspicion. The house returned to peaceful elegance. Lessons lingered for all who had taken part, and for you, mon ami, who watched the drama unfold with Poirot. A theatrical wisdom remains. Observe the performances around you in daily life. Ask yourself, why does this person avoid certain eyes? Why do the hands stay too steady in moments of claimed shock? If you are hiding guilt, how would you perform innocence? The careful observer will notice the mask slips. Truth does not rehearse. It flows naturally, even when it stumbles. Until the next theatre of crime, mes amis. Poirot watches always.